India suffered slavery of about 1,000 years. So what India you see today and what India was, there is no meeting point. They are quite different. Because India has emerged after 1,000 years of slavery only recently, only in 1947. During these years, all the leadership of the society was destroyed. The libraries were burnt, temples were destroyed, and the teaching institutions were also destroyed. The tradition of learning got broken up. This is the price India had to pay for this slavery. So let me tell you, the earliest, all civilizations developed on the banks of the rivers. You know why? Most of people know why. Because the earliest human beings were hunters and gatherers. It took them quite a while to change from hunting and gathering to agriculturist profession. While you see, why was it difficult? Why was it difficult to take up agriculture? Because to take up to whole-time agriculture, it needed that you should have sufficient production, which may be of use to them during the lean period. And it took some time. And this was only possible on the banks of the river where water was available in abundance. So in India, civilizations, in the world context, you know, civilization developed on the banks of the river Nile, on the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates River in China, and the banks of the Yangtze rivers. All over the world, they developed on the banks of the rivers. India also, civilizations developed on the banks of various rivers, on the banks of the river Ganges. You know, river Ganges, where it is? This is the course of the river Indus. And there are 5 rivers around this river. 5 rivers. And there used to be a 7th river, which was known as Saraswati River. Vedas were written mostly on the banks of the Saraswati River. And it is for this reason, the name of the goddess of learning is Saraswati. But it disappeared in 2000 BC. You see, people, Saraswati was part of the race memory, but people thought that it was an imaginary river, it never was there. When the Britishers came, they were enlightened people. They tried to discover the history of India for their own purpose, because they had to govern the country. The East India Company was formed in 1600 AD. And they took 150 years to acquire position of power in India. The Battle of Plassey, let me give you the dates. The earliest date of this civilization, which grew on the rivers of on the banks of the 7 rivers, is called the Indus-Saraswati civilization. It is also known as Harappan civilization. Harappan civilization. The earliest site of the Harappan civilization was somewhere in Mehergarh, somewhere here. It's dated as 7000 BC.
Wow.
The earliest site is dated 7000 BC.
Mehergarh.
Mehergarh.
Now near modern Pakistan.
In Pakistan, in the state of Balochistan.
In modern Pakistan, which used to be part of India.
Afghanistan also used to be part of India in ancient times.
That old.
So this date is important, 7000 BC. it might be 8000 BC because 60 years back we knew of only two sites, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. But now archaeologists have discovered more than 1,500 sites. And most of these sites are on the dried banks of the river Saraswati. So there were 7 rivers there, and this area is known as Sapta Sindhu in Vedas. Vedas were written in this area, and they called their area as Sapta Sindhu. Sapt means 7. 7. And Sindhu means river. Sapta Sindhu. This area is known as Sapta Sindhu, and Vedas were written in the Sapta Sindhu area. This northwestern India, part of which is in now Pakistan. This was the area where this civilization developed. Is that clear? In 2000 BC, the river Saraswati dried up. There were tectonic changes. Earlier, Yamuna River or Jamuna River used to drain into Saraswati. You see, Saraswati River was from, this is Sindhu, and here was almost parallel to Sindhu, there was Saraswati River. It started from Himalayas and then into Rann of Kutch near Gujarat. And Yamuna, which used to drain into Saraswati River, changed its course and now drains into Ganges near the city of Allahabad or Prayag.
So Yamuna changed course around
Changed
2000
course.
BC.
And people migrated from that area and they spread all over India. They went southwards, they went westwards, they went north. In South India, is somebody from South India? In South India, and they are known as Saraswat Brahmins, means coming from the Saraswati area. They still retain that memory that they are Saraswats, coming from the area of Saraswati. There are many families, if you ask them their caste name, they will say they are Saraswats. Just as Jewish people have not forgotten their origin, Saraswats have also not forgotten their origin. They still remember.
They have collective memory.
They have collective memory, race memory. So one important date is 7000 BC, the other important date is 2000 BC. Now, in the 5th century BC, the king Darius of Persia, it was the first attempt for an invasion of India.
5 BC.
5th century BC, not exactly, I'm not telling the date. Darius, you see, occupied some areas of Sindh, where Karachi is, this area he occupied.
King Darius.
Darius,
From?
from Persia, Achaemenid dynasty. This was the first foreign invasion of India. 5th century BC. So from 7000 BC to 5th century BC, there was relative peace. Alexander invaded India in 326 BC.
500 BC होगा ना ये 5th century तो.
326 BC. Alexander came from Iran. He subdued Iran, Persia, came to Afghanistan, and they came to the top near Islamabad. You see, there was the Takshila University. He came here. But then he met with such stiff resistance that his troops revolted. They said they will not go further. So Alexander abandoned his expedition. He returned back to via Iran. He went to Iraq. He went to, so he took the.
He came
from somewhere in Islamabad.
नहीं वो किस देश का है Alexander?
Alexander was from Greece.
Greece.
He was a
कुछ लोगों को ना
Macedonian.
भी पता हो.
People, everybody know. I think everybody knows about Alexander. Alexander the Great, I'm
Okay.
told. And while he was returning back, you see, he took the river course. Through Indus River, he came to this Arabian Sea, took the Persian Gulf, and returned back. Went to Babylon, where he died. So while he was returning back, the tribals living near on the two sides of the Indus, they attacked him, they injured him, and because of that injury, he died in Babylon. So 326 AD. Then the next invasion was in 711 AD by Arabs. They also occupied this Sindh area, around Karachi, this area. But he had to give up. He was killed and he went back. It was the Arab invasion. It aborted. Then the next major Muslim attack was by Turks. In 1291 AD. Is that clear? At that time, the name of Delhi king was Prithviraj Chauhan.
The Indian king.
The Indian king, his name was Prithviraj Chauhan. You see, when I told you the Arabs had invaded India in 1711, the Moors had also invaded Spain in 710. 710, I believe. And they ruled Spain for 800 years. And around 15th century, they could throw away the yoke of the Moorish people, Moors. So they were there for 800 years. But in India, they were there also for about 600 to 800 years.
Oh, the Arabs or the Turks?
No, the Muslims.
Why?
So, 1291, Muhammad Ghori, the Turk, attacked India, and Prithviraj repelled his attack, defeated him, and forgave him. He warned him that he should not attack India. But he was determined. He again attacked India in 1292. Prithviraj wrote him a letter. I told you about this. Prithviraj wrote a letter to Muhammad Ghori saying that you know of my prowess. I have already defeated you once. I feel pity on your soldiers. They may not like to die. I would not like to kill them, and so I'll again defeat you. But I don't want to kill your soldiers. So I advise you to return back. Muhammad Ghori wrote him a letter that I am the representative of my brother. I am sending you a message to my brother in Afghanistan, and till such time I receive reply, I seek ceasefire. And Prithviraj granted ceasefire. Muslim historian writes that night the Indian people, the Indian soldiers passed in a riot and revelry. Riot and revelry, I'm quoting, it's written in the... and when they were tired, Muhammad Ghori attacked early in the morning and defeated. And India passed into a phase of slavery for 1,000 years.
1,000 years?
Almost 1,000 years. When the Muslim rule, you see Turks were followed by Afghans, and also in between Iranians also attacked India. Then the Mughals came in 1526. Mughals came, and they remained on the Delhi throne up to 1857. But they become very weak, and Marathas have emerged as a power during this period. It is during this period that the Britishers came and defeated the Mughals in 1757. They call it Battle of Plassey. In 1857, there was a revolt, there was a mutiny.
Battle of Plassey किस साल में थी?
1757. And this battle of, after the Battle of Plassey, the British were entrenched in India. 1757 is the date when the Muslim power had. So this is the 1947 India became independent. But it was a painful independence because India was partitioned. It was partitioned into Muslim Pakistan and secular India. All right, you get the dates, you get the general outline. Now, I was going to tell you the other thing. The Britishers who came to India, some of them were very enlightened people. When they, after 1757, after the Battle of Plassey, they realized they have to rule this country. So they wanted to know the people of the country. They wanted to know the history of the country. They wanted to know the culture of the country. And they also wanted to spread Christianity in India. So for this purpose, they made extensive study of the Indian literature, Indian scriptures, Indian religions. They made extensive studies. In 1784, means about 30 years after the Battle of Plassey, they set up the Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1784. During the course of study of the Indian literature and Indian culture, they found that there is a common vocabulary between Sanskrit and most of the European languages. They were puzzled. They did not know how to explain this. So the one explanation was that Sanskrit has influenced the European languages. But it was not acceptable to colonial masters. So the other answer could be that the European languages, English or some other European language or Greece, might have influenced the Sanskrit. but they didn't find any evidence for this. So they came up with third explanation, that there was one common source language from which both European languages and Sanskrit have descended. In 1796, in the session of the Royal of the Bengal Institute Society, its president, his name was Sir William Jones. He was a very confident person, he was a very scholarly person, he knew very many languages, he knew Sanskrit, he knew Persian, and some European languages also. He propounded the theory of common ancestral language. I am quoting, this is what on 2nd February 1786, William Jones in his presidential address said, Sanskrit language, whatever be its antiquity, is a wonderful structure, more perfect than Greek, more copious than Latin, and more exquisitely refined than either. A stronger affinity, both in roots of verb and the forms of grammar, than could have been produced by accident, so strong, indeed, that no philosopher can examine them, all three, without believing them to have sprung from a common source which perhaps no longer exists. So he propounded theory of a common source from which both Sanskrit and European languages have descended. You see, if you, in Sanskrit for mother we say matra, this much long. In English you say mother. In Persian you say mother. Similarly to father for father, the Sanskrit word is pitra. In Persian you say pida, and probably in Latin they say pater or some such thing. So, for instance, night, the Sanskrit word is nakt. You say night. The Sanskrit word is div for day. You say day. Similarly, there are many common languages. There's another, I wrote it down.
You have a list.
Yes. For is, English is. The Sanskrit word is asti. German word is ist. French word is est. Latin word is est. Greek word is esti. Persian word is ast. Spanish is est.
Wow.
S and est. Some people know. So look at they have all, there is so much common between, the vocabulary is so common in languages that people were made to think by, and again, there's so much similarity between Persian and Sanskrit that they almost seem to be twin languages.
Persian.
For milk we say dugdh. In Hindi we say dugdh, dugdh. Sanskrit is, in Hindi we say dudh, Sanskrit is dugdh. In Persian they say dugdova. We say Sindhu, they say Hindu. We are called Hindus because Persians called us Hindus. Instead of saying Sindhu, they started calling us Hindu. And because they were the rulers, they addressed us as Hindus, we appropriated the title. We started calling ourselves Hindus. Hindus were not Hindus before the Muslims came to India. So there's Sapt, is Hapt. It's almost the same word. So there was this, and the Greek, Latin, Germanic, Slavic, all these languages, they have the common vocabulary. A Russian friend of mine told me that you say, what do you say for door? What is the word for door in Sanskrit? I said it is dwar. So he said in Russian it is dwer. Look at, for a widow. We in Hindi we say vidhva. ta, tha, dha, vidva. He said in Russian it is vidva, just vidva. So there is so much, apparently there should be some reason why these languages, but Sanskrit is different from Semitic languages. It is different from Turkic languages, Turani languages. But all these Indo-European languages have some sort of connection. So this was the explanation given by it. Third, some common ancestral language. Then the question arose, where was this ancestral language spoken? Who were the people who spoke this common language? From which Indian Sanskrit, and they could not find. They placed everywhere around. It may be Central Asia, it may be Russia, it may be North Pole, it may be here, but there was no evidence. It was not found anywhere. Common language. They also came up with the explanation that probably it was Max Muller who came, that in Central Asia, our Tajikistan near in Central Asia, the Proto-Indo-European, the common language speakers were known as Proto-Indo-European people. They lived there, and from there, one group migrated westwards to Europe. The other group moved southwards to Iran, and another branch from Iran came to India. This was the, but when did they come to India? The question was, when did they come to India? They for this purpose, East India Company hired a German Sanskrit scholar. His name was Max Muller. He translated Vedas in Sanskrit. He was given the task to mistranslate the Vedas in such a manner that Hindus may, in the eyes of Hindus, the Vedas may be demeaned, may be denigrated. And it is he, I'll just read you a portion from his.
Mataji, what year was this?
His name was Max Muller.
Year.
It was in 19th century, after 1850, 1850s around that. He was engaged and he remained in the service of the East India Company for 40-50 years. He was paid exorbitantly. He was paid £4 per page, which today would be some £1,000 per page. He was paid exorbitantly. And he was a scholar, but he was a missionary scholar.
You're getting a picture of Indian history which you won't get in a textbook. What were the big things that happened leading up to
No,
that?
he wrote a letter. In one of his private letters, T.B. Macaulay, the law member of the Governor General's Council, who was in favor of English education, he had argued, we must at present do our best to create a class who will be interpreters between us and the millions whom we govern. A class of persons Indian in blood, color, but English in taste, in opinion, in moral, and intellect. He wrote a private letter in which he admitted
Max
Muller, the translation of Veda will hereafter tell to a great extent on the fate of India and on the growth of millions of souls in that country. It is the root of their religion, and to show them what their root is, I feel sure the only way of uprooting all that has sprung from it during the last 3,000 years. So he translated in such a manner that people may, in the eyes of people, the Vedas may be denigrated. He also, in one of his another letter he wrote, India is much riper for Christianity than Rome or Greece were at all time of St. Paul, but at the time of the St. Paul. In another letter he wrote, the old mischief of the priestcraft could be overthrown and the way opened for simple Christian teachings. In yet another letter of 1867 he wrote, there is no country as ripe for Christianity as India is. So Max Muller thought that by his mistranslation of the Vedas, he will be able to spread Christianity, create a background or conditions for the spread of the Christianity. So this, he gave the, it is the Max Muller who said that the speakers of the Proto-Indo-European languages or the common source language were Aryans who constituted a race.
Yeah.
Who constituted a race. In India, our word is being used for thousands of years, but not in the racial sense. It doesn't have the racial connotation. Arya means cultured.
Supreme.
Cultured, I told somebody last time I told.
Arya, our student.
Arya. Is Arya here? No, she's not here. Arya means cultured, from a good family, with good conduct, good demeanor. Arya means all, because they addressed each other as Arya Putra. They addressed each other as Arya means cultured, sophisticated, good person. It was not used in that sense.
Noble person.
A noble person. Arya means a noble person. So Max Muller also gave, he said that Aryans constituted a race. They attacked India in 1500 BC. 1500 BC, they invaded India. At that time, Dravidians, this Harappan civilization, was the civilization of the Dravidians, another people, Dravidian civilization. They came, the Aryans were pastoral people, whereas people living in the Sapta-Sindhu area, they were urbanized, commercialized people.
पहले बताइए कि उसने क्या बोला
किसने क्या बोला?
कि वो आए और उसने मारा उनको
हाँ.
वो क्लियर नहीं हुआ
So they invaded and they destroyed the Harappan sites. And as evidence they cited that in Vedas, Indra, the king of the gods, has been described as the destroyer of cities. It is written. So, this is the Aryan invasion theory. You must have read in your books that Aryans came.
Most of them don't know this theory at all, Tata.
Most of the people.
The new people don't know, so you have to start.
No. What is taught here in the universities? Are you taught the Aryans came from outside India?
इन्होंने पढ़ा ही नहीं है.
In history books you are not taught.
No.
They only
No,
learn
but
about
I have been
America.
reading some books here. In all those books, I have been reading the history books of my grandchild who studies here. In all those books it is written that Aryans came, they colonized the country, they don't. So Aryan invasion theory, at least here in America, all over the world, it is taught that there was an Aryan invasion.
Max Muller manufactured it.
Max Muller.
I'm just slightly confused. Where do the Dravidians come into this
They were
picture?
the original inhabitants of this country.
He called the Indians Dravidians.
The original inhabitants of this country were Dravidians,
Dravidians.
and it is they who had built these Harappan cities, Harappan civilization.
दादा वो क्लियर ये नहीं हुआ कि पहले थ्योरी क्या है वो पूरा क्लैरिफाई कि वो
So
गोरे लोग थे ये काले लोग थे वो सब
They,
क्लैरिफाई
they, all right.
नहीं क्योंकि बच्चे नए हैं they are new students so they may not so I'm just filling up the gaps I just need to go let's try.
It's clear up to this point? Is it clear? Or is there some confusion? Ah, yes.
Where did Max Miller say the Aryans came from?
You want me details? I'll give you. I have here.
Okay.
His detail, his writings are there.
Give you a flavor of it, right?
Yeah, just a,
geographically, you mean?
yeah, geographically.
How did he try to explain that? Where did they?
Where did they
He
come
said
from?
they came from somewhere in Central Asia, some Caucasian region.
Oh,
Central Asia.
okay.
This is what Max Miller said.
This is what Max Miller said.
Okay, yeah.
And this is what most of the people believed, even the Indians believed. They came, the Dravidians were in these cities, they fought and they destroyed these cities, they killed the Dravidians and pushed them to South India. Dravidians went to South India and they established themselves in North India, in the Sub-Sindhu region. And then when after settling here, they wrote the Vedas. So they put the age of Rig Veda as 1200 BC. This is what Max Muller says.
So he told them that the aliens, that the Aryans wrote the Vedas? That's what he said?
Yes, this word.
Wow.
We also know that it is the Aryans, the people who call themselves Arya, wrote the Vedas. This is correct. But when were they written? The problem is when were actually written. According to Max Muller, the Rig Veda was written in 1200 BC. And whereas we also believe, the later researchers also reveal that Vedas were written by not in 1200 BC, but sometimes before 3000 BC.
Before 10,000?
Before 3000 BC.
3,000.
We also believe that those who wrote Vedas called themselves Aryas, but they did not constitute a race, as Max Muller has said. And we also believe, latest researchers reveal that Aryans were the original inhabitants of this country. They did not come to this country invading it. So this is the difference. So Aryan invasion theory was propounded somewhere in the middle of the 19th century. And all these three books mention it, and they mentioned it for about 100 and 150 years. Why did they support the Aryan invasion theory? The reason was that the Britishers wanted justification for the rule in India. How? By telling that Aryans, who constitute the upper caste of the Hindus,
Wow.
they are related to upper caste Hindus of India. They are the first cousins of each other. At the same time, just as upper caste Hindus are Aryans, they are foreigners in origin, we are also, Britishers also said, we are also foreigners, and we have as much justification to India as the Hindus have, upper caste Hindus have. Third reason for which the Britishers supported this theory was because it renders Hinduism is not as an indigenous religion, but as a religion imported from outside, like Islam and Christianity. It would make Christianity more acceptable to Hindus. It also served the imperial interest of dividing Indian people. The theory implied, the Aryan invasion theory implied that the Dravidians were pushed back to South India. So North India is now Aryan and South India is Dravidian. It created racial divide between Indians, between North Indians and South Indians. South Indians organized political parties based on their enmity with the North Indians, saying that you had exploited us and killed us and pushed out of North India
Civil War.
3,000 years back. So the political division parties are still there. It also served to socially divide Indians between upper caste Hindus and lower caste Hindus. The lower caste Hindus are the original Dravidians, this according to this theory, and upper caste Hindus are the Aryans related to the Europeans. So it created a divide, social divide between the society, Hindu society, and there are many parties, political parties of the lower caste Hindus. They've organized on this basis. So it had a political purpose. Now it stands rejected. Now how does it stand rejected? There should be some sufficient evidence for this, isn't it? The argument in favor of the alien division theory is that they came from outside India. So there is no other evidence in the Indian scriptures. There is nowhere mentioned that they came from outside India. Indians do not have the race memory or collected memory of having come from some other country. There is no such thing. Second thing, had Harappan civilization, sites would have been founded by Dravidians, and had Dravidians been in North India, and when they were pushed to South India, whom did they replace in South India? There was no vacuum, there could not have been vacuum in India. If they migrated from South India and took shelter in South India, there must have been a conflict in South India. There is no such conflict. No evidence of some such conflict. Third thing, if you see in America, people came from outside and settled here. They pushed out the original inhabitants. But the cities, the mountains, the cities still bear the name of the still bear the names given by the original inhabitants, Red Indians. For instance, Massachusetts, Chicago, Mississippi River, these names were given by, not by Europeans, but by original. So the names there. There is no evidence of Dravidian name of a mountain or a river or a city in North India. The Harappan civilization had a specific culture. If these people migrated from North India to South India, in South India, they should have set up cities and cultures bearing the Harappan landmarks. No such culture is found in South India. Third thing, the most important thing is that there should be genetic studies have been done, and by Americans. The Harvard Medical Institute and Institute of Cellular Biology have the names, and they found that genetically there is no difference between North Indians and South Indians. So it is thanks to American study. This study was done in 2009. They find, and studies have also been done on the genetic studies have been done, and they found there's the Indian gene pool is quite distinct from the European gene pool. Had people come from outside, there should have been some traces here, but there are no such traces. Again, American satellite Landsat has shown that there was a Saraswati river which has dried up. Landsat, the name of the satellite is Landsat. So it shows that indeed there was a Saraswati river. In Rig Veda, Saraswati river is mentioned 60 times, and Ganga is mentioned only once. It means when the Rig Veda was written, then they wrote on the banks of the Saraswati river, and it was a flourishing river. In Rig Veda, it is mentioned that Saraswati river is a sea-like river, big river. They call it Nadi Tame, means the biggest river, the purest river, they mention it. But it dried up in 2000 BC. When Rig Veda was written, Saraswati was a flourishing river, but it in 2000 BC. But Max Muller says it was written in 1200. In 1200 BC, there was no Saraswati river. So Rig Vedas could not have been written in 1200 BC. They could only have been written before 2000 BC. So his argument is not valid. Another point regarding massacre. When the Aryans came, there was a conflict between Aryans and Dravidians, and there was a massacre. And you see, there was one British archaeologist, Wheeler. He said he discovered some skeletons on the Harappan sites, and he says these skeletons is the evidence of the massacre or the conflict that took place between Indians. When those skeletons were further examined, so if there was a conflict between the Aryans and the Dravidians, and those skeletons are evidence of that conflict, the skeleton should be found at the latest level of the excavations, because only after the skeleton the city was destroyed should have been found. But when further studies were made, they found that the skeletons have been discovered from various levels. So Professor Dales, his name was Professor G.F. Dales of the Berkeley University. He wrote an article, Mythical Massacre, and he condemned this massacre theory of the British archaeologist Wheeler. He said there was no massacre, there is no evidence. Because if there was really a massacre, there should be broken wheels, armament. No such thing has been found. So it was, the theory has been given up. This Aryan invasion theory stands demolished. This is the latest. But still in many books, the other day, as I told you, my grandson studies here. In his book, they have mentioned this Aryan invasion theory. So this one aspect is clear. Any question about Aryan invasion theory? Yes. Yes.
Well, just to go back to this Max Muller character.
Yes.
What was his, you said, was he English or German? I forget.
No, he was a German.
German. And what was his motivation for, he was paid a lot of money?
He was a Sanskrit scholar.
Yeah.
In 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th century, there was a great tradition of Sanskrit scholarship, not only in England, but in France and Germany also. Nietzsche, the German philosopher, knew Sanskrit. He was a great fan of the Upanishads. Bhagavad Gita was translated.
What was the motivation for him to...
He was engaged. He was engaged by the East India Company and paid very heavily.
Yeah, the money, that was...
Money was the motivation. Money was the motivation. And you know, interestingly, this German scholar propounded the theory of the Aryan race. And it was lapped up by German, Hitler. He started calling, because somehow the word went around that that Aryan race was a superior race. And because it was a superior race, which colonized Asia and Europe, Germany lapped it up. and they adopted swastika as their emblem. Swastika is a Indian symbol of good luck, good omen. Swastika means su-astik. Asti means being, asta, esti, being. Su means good. Suhasini, good. Hasini means one who smiles. Su means good. Suhasini, one who has good smiles. Suhasini. Su-astik. Su means good. Well, astik means being. For well-being, for good being, auspicious being, swastik. So swastika can be explained only through Sanskrit, by no other language. He adopted it, and he misused it.
Yeah. How did it turn into it? Because in Germany it turned into like white Caucasian dominance.
Caucasian, again, German.
In Germany. So it's just interesting that, like, how did that translate into that?
Yeah, the symbol itself.
Or
Yes.
just the Aryan race, like how did I understand that they took it as a superior race, so the Germans, so Hitler took that
But
on.
there was no Aryan race. There was no Aryan race. It was just a concept.
It was just a concept that Max
A
Muller did
linguist, you see, somebody said that a race was created by the linguists.
that. Okay.
They served their purpose.
So they just, okay, it's just so interesting how that, it went in that direction.
Yes, it's into that direction. It did more damage to England and Germany than to India. This theory of Aryan invasion.
How recently was this brought to light that it was all, how recently has this research been brought to light that the Aryan theory is false?
Around 10 years.
10 years.
No, it has been going on for such a long time. There was a long debate. People still stick to the old theory. The new ones are, but because of the technology and science, the Aryan invasion theory stands demolished. Because of the researches done by Professor Dales, no, I'll tell you which institute, name of the institute, which have done research. The recent genetic investigations negate the Aryan invasion theory and also the Aryan migration theory. The Center of Cellular and Molecular Biology, CCMB, Hyderabad, India, along with the researchers of Harvard Medical School, Harvard School of Public Health, Broadway Institute, Harvard, and MIT, USA in 2009, analyzed 500,000 genetic markers across the genomes of 132 individuals from 25 ethnic groups from 13 states in India across multiple caste groups. The study asserts, based on the impossibility of identifying any genetic indicators across caste lines, that castes in South Asia grew out of traditional tribal organization during formation of Indian society and was not the product of any Aryan invasion and subjugation of Dravidian people. So it is, the research was done in 2009 by the Harvard institutions and the MIT of USA.
So the new genetic research is
Yes.
really bringing it strongly to light.
Strongly, and also the Lancet's.
But unfortunately, all the history books we picked up in English language talk about Aryan invasion theory as a fact. Because they are being written just churned.
No, it changed. It will take time. There is a mindset going back to 150 years. It won't change easily, but it would change ultimately.
It will change.
Yes.
I'm just curious about states, especially like Kerala, that that are very strongly Christian, have taken Christianity on as a religious identity to a certain extent. Why, if people were pushed to the south, and then like you're saying, and the north, there was this separation, this divide. How is it historically that the most southern state became? I don't know the history to know. I don't know if I can call it more of a Christian state, but I know that there's a large Christian population there. How did that come to be?
No, it is said that St. Thomas, one of the apostles of Christ, went to Kerala and spread Christianity. You see, among Indians, particularly among Hindus, they don't mind if you become a Christian.
Yeah.
Because Hindus are not converting people, they don't convert people.
Right, right.
And they think that tomorrow when we talk about it, about the Hindu culture, they think that all roads lead to the same God.
Right.
There is a very beautiful saying in just as all rivers lead to the same ocean, all paths lead to the same God. So that is why you see, very interesting it is, in that context I'll try to tell you that you have monotheism, you have polytheism, polytheism, but Hindus, what would you call them?
All pervasive theism.
You see, they call it monism. Monism,
Monism.
which is a very unusual thing. Very unusual. Because when the civilizations came into existence, all cultures, all civilizations were polytheistic. All cultures. Islam is a very strongly monotheistic religion, they only worship Allah. But before Muhammad, they had about 300 gods. And God says also. Similarly, Jews had also many gods and goddesses before Moses. They worshipped various gods and goddesses. Greeks had so many gods and goddesses. Romans had so many gods and goddesses. And Hindus had so many gods and goddesses. So polytheism was there because people were allowed to console themselves, or the world is strife-stricken. It's a very difficult world if people get some consolation by worshipping certain gods. Who could have any objection? But then, you see, monotheism, this my reading says, arose in Egypt. In Egypt, they had many gods and goddesses. There was one dog-shaped god, some other god, Isis and Isis and Iris. They had different gods and goddesses in Egypt. But they also worshipped, one of the gods was Aten, A-T-E-N, Aten. Aten means sun. So there was in 14th century BC, there was a king, Amenhotep IV. He names himself Akhenaten, he called him, means worshipper of Surya, of sun, Aten, God. You see, why he declared that henceforth only sun will be worshipped and no other god will be worshipped. So he was the first monotheistic emperor of the world. He declared Akhenaten, and he closed down. So monotheism does not merely imply worshipping one god. It also implies not allowing other gods to be worshipped. This is pure monotheism. Not allowing other gods to be worshipped. So earlier the major god who was worshipped before Akhenaten was god Amon, A-M-O-N. Amon was worshipped. He closed down the temples of Amon. He created a new capital. Its name was Amarna, new capital. He created a new capital. And he declared himself as the vice regent of the god. So there was political, there was power game. Everybody worships God, and if the king becomes the deputy god, then all the power of the god will be wielded by the deputy. So that way, Akhenaten became the most powerful pharaoh. But after his death, they again reverted to worship of Amon. Amarna was destroyed. And wherever Akhenaten was represented on the stone, they were wiped out. So, but he was the first. And probably inspired. You see, at that time, many Jewish people were in Egypt. You know? So Moses brought them out of the Egypt and brought to the promised land of Canaan. So he was inspired by the monotheism. And he preached monotheism among the Jewish people, that you should worship only Yehovah and no other God. And in Genesis and Exodus, there are references that if anyone worshipped other God, he was punished or killed. So monotheism started there, taken up by the Jews, then by the Christians, and Muslims borrowed it. So monotheism is this polytheism and monotheism. Hindus also were worshipping many gods. And in Hindus, in Ved, you have many gods. Agni, Vayu, Varun, all those gods, and all different chapters deal with the worship of different gods and goddesses, written by different rishis. But then they found a way. They found that these different gods and goddesses are manifestation of one supreme power. They call it monism. So
How do you spell that?
M-O-N-I-S-M. So you worship many gods, yet you know that it is only the symbol of that supreme reality. It is not that God ultimately. And that is why if you go to a Hindu temple, you see Kali, you see various gods and goddesses. You see Durga, you see Kali, you see Hanuman, you see Ram. And if you put Jesus, people have no quarrel. You are welcome. And we also sometimes put this photograph of Jesus in our house. There's no problem. Because ultimately they are all manifestation of the same God.
When we lived
In
Chennai,
Gita-
we used
in
to go to
Gita-
church, Tata, do you remember?
Ah, yes.
When we lived in Chennai, my sister was unwell. There was no temple, so we just went to the church.
So
I remember that one.
in Krishna, in Gita also says, whoever worships me in whatever way, I am to him that. So if you worship Krishna, God as a Jesus, he is Jesus to you. So this is what. So that this is called exclusivism and inclusivism. So Hinduism is inclusive religion. You are also correct. We are also correct. It is not exclusive that only I am correct, you are wrong. So there is no problem about it. Now let's stop to history. We diverted, isn't it? We diverted too. Now, when the Muslim, you see, why did Indians lose to Muslims? Why were they defeated? That's the question. They were so easily defeated. And they had to suffer 1,000 years slavery. There was one king, Ashok. He ruled the country from 269 BC. 269 BC. He was a Buddhist king. He had embraced Buddhism. But he never preached Buddhism as a king. But he was very keen to promote spiritual welfare of the people. And he had appointed a class of officers who were called Dharmapatra, who were to ensure that people are dharmic, are ethically guided people. Ethically. The assessment of Ashok is that before Ashok, in the Indian culture, there was a balance between the spiritual self and the material self. But after Ashok, there was a lopsided development. Spiritual self came to dominate the material self. The evidence in support of the argument is given that before Ashok, there were a series of writers who wrote on the subjects of polity, political development, etc. But after Ashoka, no such book was written. So there was disbalance. And the other reason was that with the Hindus believe in karma theory, and karma means action. You know what karma theory, but whatever we do, it affects us. Buddhists also believe in karma theory. It means an individual, whatever he does, is responsible and will be accordingly dealt with after the death. This is the belief. He may get birth or not. So, karma theory got propounded after Buddhism came into being, Buddhism spread. And so individuals became responsible for themselves, not for the society. And so when it came to attack from abroad, they were least concerned. They were concerned about their actions, their karmas. As a group, this is, yes.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. Are you saying that the Buddhist philosophy brought forth the concept of karma?
No,
okay.
Hindu and Buddhist both. But it's more pronounced among Buddhists.
Okay.
Buddhists don't believe in God. You know it?
Right.
Buddhists don't believe in God. They don't believe in soul also. Yet they believe in transmigration of soul. Rebirth. So what is, you see, what Hindus believe, that it is soul which gets rebirth. But Hindus don't believe in soul, and yet they believe in rebirth. What they say, that karmas, whatever karma we do, they themselves constitute a personality and give birth. So undue, much more emphasis on karma is given in Buddhism than in among Hindus. And if more, so who is responsible for one's karma? My own self. So we become more individualistic than, so the group thinking is not there. It is the individual is more important, and it's for this reason.
Does that reduce the ability to fight off invaders?
Yes.
Would your non-violence, did that also make a difference? The undue emphasis on
Huh.
non-violence?
And second thing, undue importance to non-violence. Now, you see, I'll try to explain. If you know the Hindus, they know, the stories of Ram and Krishna. They are treated as gods. They are reincarnation of God, Ram and Krishna. Because God is supreme, He is all power, nobody knows. They are all manifestations of the God, manifestation of divinity. Ram killed Ravan. Kans and Krishna killed Kans. So the Hindu gods killed demons. But they have two words in Sanskrit. One is Hatya, the other is Vad. Can you write? Hatya. 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 A. Hatya. Hatya means double A kadu. Hatya.
Dirgha A is at the end.
Hatya. All right? This is right. This is the way diacritical marks are made. This is Hatya. The other is Vad. Vad, DH. Vad. The other is Vad. Both the words mean killing. But Hatya means killing for your personal end, for your personal enmity. And Vad means killing for public good. A soldier kills the enemy to defend his country. He does not commit Hatya. He commits Vad. Ram kills Ravan, but he does not does the Hatya of Ravan. He does demon. He does the Vad of Ram for the public good. Jains and Buddhists don't have this distinction. They believe in absolute non-violence. Absolute non-violence. Whereas Hindus believed in this qualified non-violence. If you look at the world history, world map, most of the Central Asian countries which are Muslims today were all Buddhists. Because they could not resist.
Resist what?
Resist the Muslim invasion, the foreign invasion. They could not fight for their independence, for their culture. I'm not running down any religion, not running down Buddhism. It's a great religion. So, but then this is a fact. Now the question is, why did Buddhism disappear from India? This, you all know that Buddhism started in India. The Ashoka sent missionaries to various countries of the world, sent missionaries to Ceylon, went to the Central Asia, to Iraq, to Greece. He sent missionaries and he spread religion like anything. And many powerful Indian kings were Buddhists. But it disappeared. The reason being, it did not have the resilience that Hinduism has. In that sense, Buddhism has a cadre of bhikkhus. Bhikkhus, you know, those who put on ochre-colored robes and shaven heads and shine ochre-colored robes. And those who are non-bhikkhus are known as upasaks. Bhikkhus and upasaks. Upasak means lay worshippers. So Buddhists are of two classes. One is bhikkhus and the other is upasak, or lay worshippers. And Buddhism is the first institutionalized religion where bhikkhus used to live in vihars, in buildings especially made for bhikkhus. And 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 bhikkhus used to live in one big building. Bhikkhus all over. And they used to call these areas as vihar. And the upasaks outside that vihar, the Buddhist temple structure, there are 5,000 Buddhists there, would live upasaks, the lay worshippers. And in that community, vihar was the nucleus which controlled which was the nucleus of the Buddhist society. Children from worshippers would come to the vihar for their education. The Vaidya would be a bhikshu. People will come to the vihar for the treatment. For all religious ceremonies, they will come to the vihar. Even the carpenter would be a Buddhist bhikkhu. So the society was dependent it moved around the vihars. And when Muslims came, they were very visual. People with shaven heads, curl, and they killed. They were killed. They were the easy targets of the. You see, there is a state in India which is known as Bihar, Bihar, Bihar. There were Nalanda University was there. There was a Nalanda University in Bihar, in near Bihar. Nalanda University was established in 5th century AD. It had 10,000 students and 2,000 professors. If ever you go to India, you should go and see the ruins of Nalanda University. 10,000 students and 2,000 professors. It had a 9-storied library. 9-storied library. All the students lived there. 10,000 students lived there. And students from all over the world, from Iran, from Persia, from China. There was a Chinese monk, Buddhist monk, his name was Faiyan. The other was Huinsang, and the third was Itzing. We know of that library through the writings of these Chinese travelers. Huinsang was a great scholar, the Wukim. He also worked as professor in the university. The admission was very difficult in the university. The admission test was very strict. Only the best students were allowed to be admitted. And Ayurveda was a compulsory subject along with other subjects in the university. And the teaching was completely free. Not a penny was charged from these students. It was supported by the states and by the rich people. This library, in 1192, when Prithviraj Chauhan was defeated, in 1193, this library was destroyed. And every single bhikkhu was killed. And the library, 9-story building of library was burnt. Every book was burnt. When somebody wanted to know what book this contained, what does this book contain, they looked around. There was not a single soul alive to tell them what it is. Because I'm not telling. It is the Muslim historians who have written. So, when the Muslims came, the Buddhist monks, because they had a Buddhist society, bhikkhus, and living together in thousands, they all were killed, mostly killed. Or they renounced Buddhism. They took off their saffron apron and they tried to look like ordinary citizens. So this is how Buddhism, but how did Hindus survive? The Hindus survived because for a Hindu, there is so much of flexibility. You may believe in God, you may believe in God, you may be Hindu. You may not believe in God, still you are a Hindu. You may be atheist, yet you are a Hindu. Yes, this is true. There are many people. There are people who go to temples. There are people who never go to temple, and they are Hindus. Because the idol that you put in the temple is not the God. It's only the symbol of the God. You put any symbol. You put any symbol, it's the God. So Hindus, what happened when the temples were destroyed? When the temples were destroyed, dozens of temples were destroyed, libraries were burnt. what Hindus did, temples is destroyed, but the religion is not destroyed. They were not dependent on temples like Buddhist. What they did, they picked up a stone pebble, put in their house, and they said it is the symbol of Shiva, and you worship every morning and evening. You wish this. This is how they survived. The temples, you see, they used to have a spire, but in Gujarat, Haveli Sangeet. Haveli means a big mansion. So they took instead of a spire temple, in any house they will make a temple. They will not make a show of it. Hindu sadhus also put on ochre colored dresses, sannyasis, not everyone, sannyasis. But then I met in Ayodhya a sannyasi of a particular sect. They said, we are white colored, we put on Shwet Vastradhari. We are the sannyasis who put on white clothes. What happened was, when the Muslims were around, they put on white clothes. They are still sannyasis, but they put on white, not the saffron. So this is how Hindus survived. Because of their non-insistence on a particular mode of worship. You remain a Hindu. So this is how we survived. These are the facts of history. So this is how. Let me come back to this. The Muslim rule was difficult rule for Indians in general. It was very difficult. This rule was like that of, as you find Pakistan these days. The Muslim, it was the same. Because they would seek converts, they would take away the women, they will destroy the temples. This is what is happening in Pakistan. When the country was divided among Muslims and Hindus, among secularists and Muslims, Pakistan had a population of 24% Hindus, that region, and just for Muslims. Today, Hindus constitute only 1% of the Pakistan's population. They've either been converted or killed, or they've escaped to India. In India, when the country was partitioned, Muslims constituted 6% of the population. Today, Muslim population in India has risen to almost 18-20%. So, you can see the approach to this question of religion. So, the Muslim rule in India was difficult. But then, during the Muslim rule, there was one good point. The Muslim rulers had settled down in India. They were not from, they had not settled in another country, just as the English people were in England and they were ruling the country. So the Muslims did not economically drain the country. They let the systems continue as they were. The village economy was undisturbed to a great extent. But British people were not as barbaric as Muslim rulers were. But they were very sharp. They economically ruined the country. They destroyed the village system. For thousands of years, the Indian villages were self-contained. They did not need anything from outside. The cultivator will cultivate the grains. The carpenter will do the woodwork and supply it to the cultivator. He will give him the food. There will be a local teacher. There will be a local priest, and there will be a spinner and weavers locally. and the shoemaker would also be there. They constituted the community. They supplied to each other's need, and they did not import anything from outside. When the Britishers came, there was the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. They were looking for markets where to sell the goods, because through machinery you produce much more than you actually consume. You need markets to sell it. So if they try to convert India into a market. If India is to be converted into market, so its industry, its economy has to be destroyed. And so they deliberately destroyed India's economy. Indians were exporters of cotton clothes. Cotton clothes was in demand all over Europe at the time. They were exporting. They put taxes on import, taxes on export. They would not let. And imported was tax-free. So they made the things deliberately cheaper. With the result, millions of people, weavers, were rendered unemployed. The poverty was grinding in the villages. People just ran away to Mauritius, Fiji, Suriname, Guyana. They were promised you will get just a rupee or half a rupee or a quarter of a rupee you will get every day. You will get food. They ran away to escape that poverty. They changed the revenue laws. Earlier, for thousands of years, there was no serfdom in India. The tenant, cultivator, could not be evicted from his land, whether he pays or doesn't pay. And he was expected to pay the revenue in kind. If the crop, he was expected to pay 1/5 of the total crop or 1/6 of the total crop. If it was a famine year, he would not pay anything. If it's less growth, he will pay less. The Britishers created a system in which they were required to pay the fixed revenue, irrespective of the production that year. So even in famine years, he was required to pay. Earlier, the tenant could not have been evicted. They created a system under which he could be evicted from the land. So all the time, tenants were insecure, they could be evicted anywhere. They created a middleman to collect the land revenue. They would call them Zimidar or Jagirdar. They had to give fixed, they had to collect revenue from the village and give it to the government. They were the intermediaries. So the collection from the village was fixed. But that middleman was given the liberty to charge any amount of land revenue that he wishes. So that middleman, who was dependent on the mercy of the Britishers, constituted a class of people who had the vested interest in the continuance of the British Empire. They were really heartless people. They would throw out somebody they would extract as much money as possible. So the villages were ruined economically, country was ruined economically. Okay. So this happened, and I have some. There is a figure which I noted yesterday that during 49 years of British rule, during 49 years, 20 years were famine years. So every alternate year there was a famine during the British time. Yes. Out of 49 years from 1860 to 1908, 20 were famine years. Total of famine, 1876 to 87 there was famine, 1 million people died. 1896 to 97, 5 million people died. 1890 to 1900, 1.25 million people died. And in 1943, 2 to 3 million people died. So the country was in pauperization of the rural India. So that way, they were not barbaric. They did not convert people. They did not destroy people. But then they economically ruined the country. So this is the political outline. Is the outline of the India's political map. Any question? All right.
Thank you.